All right, it's Saturday, March 2nd. This is a weekly SPY recap and an opportunity to see what unfolded during the past week and what might be developing going forward. You can see here on the daily chart, first of all, for the 5 days of the week, price essentially moved lower a little bit to start the week, held, and then eventually moved up by the end of the week here. So we'll go through all 5 days in a minute. But if we look at the weekly chart, it's another green week to the upside. If we zoom this out a little bit, you can see what a tremendous rally we've had here since October with only really one down red bar. Even this bar was more of a pause bar. And so clearly, at any moment, we can get a 2 down red bar. That could even go a little deeper. And I'll show you how that is actually it's setting up this week for an interesting chain reaction to the downside should price action take us there. But for the time being, just given this weekly green chart that closed green, we at least expect that high to be tested. And it could just be a very brief test. And then we'll see if it continues or fails. As always, even on this week, coming into the week, we were talking all week how this green bar, we expected price to be tested to the upside. And once I show you how it opened up a little lower but couldn't follow through, that became even more and more likely. So with that expectation in mind, it was very good trading the last couple of days of the week, especially. And we'll go over that. So for this week, I see more of almost a narrowing move to the upside, but you still expect a little higher. It almost seems like we're getting into this kind of area where we break the highs but don't really go all that much higher given the exhaustion risk in play, and at any moment things can break down. So actually I'll start there in terms of the potential breakdown. Obviously, if we get some kind of 2 down day, starting next week, which would be the daily chart here, new low. If price wants to start there, that targets down to this purple line, this low down here to broaden out this bar here, higher highs, and then you'd go to lower lows. If this purple line is hit, that's actually the weekly chart 2 down. And once that gets hit, that targets down towards, these lows down here. If we get a 2 down week developing. Now, the thing is, if we hit this low, that's below the midpoint of the prior month, which I have in purple. So if we get some kind of big chain reaction failure that has all these targets, then we get below the midpoint of the month. That could almost mean an outside month to the downside. Now, again, am I predicting all that? No. I mean, it's just the type of thing where these various targets to the downside kind of have a pinball effect to really have a potential downside price action. So I'll certainly, if price leads me there, I'll be excited to try the shorts and see really if they meet their targets. But speaking about meeting targets, that's what didn't happen this week. In other words, we got the 2 down this week here that should have hit this low into this gap, which I still think is going to be filled eventually. And once you saw it this looked like a nice red bar to follow through lower the next day, which it did, but then you could see it had a hammer bar and then this bar was inside and then we went up. So that's the thing. When price comes down and doesn't hit a target, it gets exciting to get up to hit to the next targets. And we also had that, high of last week in mind the whole time. So that's why, watching this price action, seeing the up move, we were kind of anticipating this kind of an end to the week. If we go day by day here, let's just kind of go through it. Once we closed last week, Friday, red, you expected a little lower. And on the 26th here, that was like the close on Friday. And here on the 26th, it was a very good sell signal where the first bar kind of paused, inside, eventually went lower. There's your one push down, pause, second push down. That was a great trade on Monday, and you end up with a red bar. You're expecting lower the next day. So clearly, we did go lower, but then had a, we wanted to see, in other words, after this red bar, if we would come down in compound fashion to take out that low. So we started the session, again, with a good, first bar down, then pause, then a little 2 up, 2 down red bar here. So that gave us kind of 1 push, pause, 2 push. And there's your morning trade that I always talk about. That's where I'm looking to take gains on the directional move of the day. And then you kind of see what happens. Is it just kind of holding there? Or in this case, it reversed pretty strongly. So you're getting a hammer bar coming into Wednesday, really expecting price to go up. And I remember Wednesday, price gapped down instead. And it was, you really were hoping that this would be the start of that move back to those weekly highs. But instead it came down, but it just paused for 3 or 4 bars, and then it started up. So there was actually an intraday buy again, but you knew you were starting at the bottom of yesterday's range, not quite at the midpoint of yesterday's range to have a new high. And you made 1 push up, pause. It couldn't really follow through, and then it just kind of settled in all day choppy from kind of your entry area, and you end up with that inside bar, and I discussed that on some videos during the day. Then you got the big gap up here on economic news, and as always, it didn't really follow through on bar one. After a big gap up, price pulls back, but I talked about this on some videos. You got one push down pause, second push down, and I was expecting, a reversal kind of in this area, and you got the inside green bar here on Thursday. That was your buy signal, and that ended up working all the way back up to the highs of the day, in line with our expectation to take out these two green line targets. Actually, I remember on the morning it took out that first target here, and that's why it was an area to pause and see what happens. And it ended up kind of wanting to fill the gap a little bit and then start back up again. Eventually, it just missed that green target, but then on Friday, we had the nice little opening bar here, green, pause, bar two. There's your buy on bar number 3. Took out the first bar high, got to our green line target, and had a nice one push, two push up all day long. Big, strong day to the upside. Only thing to think about was being long on Friday. So we end the week with a nice green bar. So you kind of expect that high to be tested. We'll see if that midpoint of this bar is penetrated to the, let's say we start up and we come back to the midpoint. That would be the first sign that maybe getting a 2 down. A 2 down would have a projection to the weekly lows. The weekly lows has a projection down to this low, and if that all takes place, then you're taking out the midpoint of the prior month and maybe getting a reversal month. Although again, this trend is very strong to the upside, so I still think within this context you're looking for good buy opportunities. But you can judge each pullback. If there is going to be a pullback, you can judge it based on the key levels you're looking for. Finally, the open of the month is right here. This was the first day of the month. So if we turn this month red, I'm going to be biased to the downside until we have some kind of reversal action that gets back and turning that, the monthly chart of March back to green again. So keep that open in mind as well as kind of a key reference point should we get any kind of pullback. If things turn red, then stay negative and kind of watch these levels that we're talking about. In the meantime, it's short-term exhaustion risk. I'll kind of expect the midpoint of this bar to hold and at least test higher, but we'll go day by day. So that's kind of a recap of last week, what to look for next week, some of the key levels, and as always, we just kind of take, the different time frames, kind of judge the expectations on each and see where some of those expectations intersect or not. So for now, trend still up, but interesting, pullback potential should price want to start down. We will see what happens next week.